I think that we could start our webinar today. Thank you very much for joining us. I would like to thank our speakers and our participants and attendees as well. My name is Marek Podsklan and I am consultant of Foreign Trade Department and at Serio Agency. I will talk a bit about technical details and also about program. Please presentation so that I can show you our program. I hope that you are able to see our shared screen. Next slide, please. So in terms of our program, first of all, as I mentioned, we will speak a bit about technical details. Then there will be opening speech of Ms. Barinkova, that is Deputy Director of Foreign Trade Department at our Serio Agency. Then the speech of His Excellency Mr. Alexander Micovcin, who is Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary Ambassador of the Slovak Republic to Switzerland and Liechtenstein as well. And then you, dear guests, will get acquainted with the presentation of Linda Kapustova-Helbichova, that is First Secretary at our embassy, at Slovak Embassy in Bern, and then the intervention from the side of Mr. Michel Patit, that is Managing Partner of business entity, Swiss business entity called Prodigo Saro. After those interventions and speeches and presentations, we will have Q&A session, Q&A part. So in terms of this regarding the technical details, I would like to thank you for your questions that you sent during the registration process. I want to tell you that we had to divide them into two parts. First part of this bundle of questions will be answered during this webinar itself. And some of you also chose the option for online free of charge consultation meetings that will be held today in the afternoon. And your questions will be answered during those online free of charge meetings. So don't worry, I want to make you sure that your questions will be answered. I want to point out also to the button called Q&A that you can see on the bottom of your screen. So please don't hesitate to ask some questions if you have. And I want to assure you as well that this webinar is going to be recorded and it's for those that couldn't unfortunately join us today, so that they are able to watch it later. So thank you very much, and now I would like to deliver speech to Ms. Barinkova.
Thank you very much, Marek. So, dobré ráno všetkým. Good morning to everyone. Dear Mr. Ambassador, dear guests and speakers, dear participants of today's webinar, thank you very much for joining us today. First of all, I would like to welcome you to today's webinar focused on doing business in Switzerland. I would like to say a big thank you to Mr. Micovcin, Ms. Kapustova-Helbichova, and also Michael and his colleague from Prodigo. Thank you very much that you find a time for us to share your experiences regarding the Swiss market. We really see a big potential for the cooperation between our two countries, and Switzerland is for us and probably for all businessmen a country of opportunities, of innovative and smart solutions. And we as a Serio agency, we are trying to really support you as Slovak companies to find a partner in the Swiss market. We organize different business missions, exhibitions, seminars and webinars. So hope you can join some of them so you will be successful in this market. Before the pandemic situation, we were trying to organize business missions with our president, Ms. Chaputova. Unfortunately, this business mission was postponed, but we hope that you can participate, or the companies can participate in this business mission later. But we are also planning some other activities in Swiss market. For example, next year we would like to organize a business mission focused probably on food. So you are very welcome to join us in this mission. We would like to organize it sometimes in February or March. So you are really invited. Yeah, we maybe will have also other activities. We will inform you about this. So this webinar is like a first step for you to learn more about Switzerland, about the opportunities that you may find on this market. So I wish you a lot of luck. I wish that you find the information that you need, and hopefully it will help you in the future to be successful on this market. So thank you very much one more time, and I pass my word to Marek. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalia. Now I would like to deliver the speech to our ambassador in Bern, Mr. Michalcin. Please. I think that we are not able to hear you.
Sorry, I have forgotten to unmute my mic. Sorry. Is it now better? Okay. So once more, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants. I'm really delighted to welcome you on behalf of the Embassy of the Slovak Republic in Bern at today's webinar focused on Switzerland and its business environment. There are some similarities between Slovakia and Switzerland. We are of similar size, so we both have beautiful nature, tourist spots and attractions, mountains and valleys. On the international scene, we stand for the same values. We have an excellent cooperation in international organizations. Both our countries are strong supporters of multilateralism. We both strive for having excellent relations with our neighbors and all our international partners. Our economies are export-oriented, and both Slovakia and Switzerland want and need to make the best of it. I have mentioned similarities, but there are also differences, quite naturally. Slovakia, being a full-fledged member of the EU since 2004, belonging to the EU family with all its pros and cons, benefiting from the EU single market, and last but not least, also benefiting from its membership in the Euro Club. As we all know, it happened already more than 12 years ago, that when on the 1st of January 2009, Slovakia became the 16th member of so-called Eurozone. In the economic sphere, there is already a quite strong partnership between Switzerland and Slovakia. Switzerland belongs to important investors to the Slovak Republic with a cumulative direct investments of several hundreds of millions of euro. We also have a strong trade relationship, although our mutual annual trade turnover reached in the period of past few years the level of more than 1.7 billion euro, still more can be achieved, and we can make this economic partnership even stronger. And of course, it is always a great pleasure to hear from our Swiss partners and companies active in Slovakia that they have a positive Slovak experience. Just last week, during his opening speech at the first ever export forum of Slovak economic diplomacy, our Minister of Foreign and European Affairs, Mr. Ivan Korčok, has said, and I quote, "The years 2020 and 2021 will go down in history as the years of a pandemic. However, there are also years of challenges and new opportunities. Every crisis forces us to come up with new ideas, new visions, and innovations." End of quote. So I hope that today's webinar, focusing on specificities and particularities of Switzerland, Swiss market, and in general on Swiss, not only business environment, will be very useful for all the attendees. And using this opportunity, I would like to express my gratitude to our colleagues and partners from Sario Agency and Prodigo Company for their contribution and organization of today's online event. My thanks also go to Mrs. Linda Kapusto-Helbichova. She's my deputy, and at the same time, for the last 2 years, also my colleague in charge of the economic diplomacy issues at our embassy in Bern. And she will soon approach you with a bit more elaborated information related to the Swiss market know-how. Thank you very much for your attention, and I pass the floor back to Sario, colleague. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention. And now I think that there is a time for presentations, and so that you get as much information as possible within the Swiss market about how to start your business there, about how to enter this market. So I would like to ask my colleague Linda, so that she starts her presentation.
Good morning, everybody. I would like just to say a few words. Thank you very much for your participation. My name is Linda, and I'm working for the Embassy of the Slovak Republic. I have prepared a presentation for you today in order to tackle the most interesting part of Swiss business. I hope this will be useful for you. In case of any question, I will be in the afternoon on your disposal to answer. I would like also to express my thanks to Sario, to colleagues from the Sario, and to the colleagues from Swiss company to Switzerland Prodigo. So I will share the presentation now. Let's start. Okay. Okay, this is the end. I have to start from the beginning, obviously. Okay. Okay, here it is. Okay, perfect. So if everybody heard me good, we can start with an introduction, which is also important. Even we are in Europe, the Swiss business culture particularities are so many that we could spend an hours to be here and to speak about the different business in Slovakia and in Switzerland. I would like to give probably one or two examples for you. For example, in this COVID time, when we have been preparing a webinar, we have started already in January having a webinar with the Swiss and Slovak partners in June. So there is a really, you need to take your time to approach to your Swiss partners in order to prepare, because any flexibility is not accepted here in Switzerland. So it's moreover, you need to take your time and to give the time to your Swiss partners. So this is the first, but I think Michelle and my colleagues from Prodigo will tell you more about this. But this is really a difference between Slovak Republic and Switzerland. In order to send the links, for example, for a webinar, we in Slovakia, we do it just on time, right before or one day before the event. In Switzerland, you usually receive a link for such webinar 1 or 2 weeks ago. So this is also important to say. At what stage could be the economic diplomat within Embassy of the Slovak Republic helpful? This is also a question I was approached last week in Bratislava by many companies. The matter of fact is that the role of economic diplomat in Switzerland and in all the embassies is quite limited compared to the expectations of the Slovak companies in terms of scope of activities, because economic diplomat can consult, can advise, interconnects. This is also important, but doesn't trade or doesn't process a specific order of the company. The matter of fact is, and this is valid more in Switzerland, that you need to be language-wise ready And of course, content of your business, like a business plan, a market analysis, and financial readiness should be ready before you are entering to the Swiss market. It's also important to think about to find or how to find or where to find your Swiss collaborator. Because here in Switzerland, the people speak several languages, mainly German and French. And this role of the Swiss colleague or coordinator cannot be replaced by the economic diplomat within the Swiss embassy. Me and my colleagues, economic diplomats, we are really interesting to bring your attention and the attention of the Swiss market towards Slovak companies. It's important for us. We will try to find the first context before the start, before the entering the Swiss market. And this is basically that what is the role of the economic diplomats. I would like to point on a special thing is a social media. Of course, we in Slovak Republic are working with the social media, but here in Switzerland is quite interesting and important to be present within LinkedIn more than in our country, because here in Switzerland, close to 3 million members are members of this social media. In Slovakia, it's rather 500,000 of people. Me, when I started here as an economic diplomat, I had to refresh my old LinkedIn profile, and this helps me to find an interlink with the people who are probably their responsiveness is better through LinkedIn than through normal or another channels. So it's really good. I have to inform you about the important people who are working also for Slovak companies. Those are honorary consuls of the Slovak Republic in Switzerland. We have 2 honorary consuls at this moment in Eclapan and in Zurich. One is in French-speaking region and the other one in German-speaking region. The contacts are shared in this presentation. This presentation is going to be shared with you afterwards. Let's start with basic facts regarding the Swiss Confederation, but I won't go too much into details because you can find everything what is important in the site of our embassy of the Slovak Republic in Bern. The link is here below in my presentation. In the part Obchod a investície, there is a document called Ekonomická informácia o teritoriu, and there you can find really the details, facts, and links, and it's very complex information, which is actual up to the date. So I will start with the basic fact, which is clear and which is well known, that Swiss Confederation is one of the most developed countries in the world, ranked high on the quality of life, public transparency, economic competitiveness, literacy, human development, and research and development too. It's important to say that the country has a history of armed neutrality. It has been in a state of war since 1850. Furthermore, it's actively involved in peace-building processes around the world. Switzerland derives the majority of its GDP from the manufacturing industry, primary chemicals, pharmaceuticals, watches, electronics, and musical instruments. Nonetheless, the service sector, especially banking and insurance, global organizations and tourism are also important component of the Swiss economy. It's important to say that the Swiss decentralization is very vivid in all levels of a Swiss life. In a political way is there are federal ministries, Bundesräte, with one rotating president, Guy Parmelan this year. Last year it was the Ministry of Environment, Mrs. Samaruga. Her or his status is primus inter pares, and it's always for 1 year. Swiss has 26 cantons and 4 official languages, and the communal level is important also too. So I will continue with the next page. Taxes, aspects, and business in Switzerland. This is also a very important topic, but I don't want to go into details. I will show you one interesting publication, the Swiss tax system. It's different in a comparison with the Slovak Republic. Taxes in Switzerland are levied by the Swiss Confederation, the 26 cantons, and approximately 2,300 municipalities. One important thing is that there are only few types of Swiss taxes which are under the Confederation, which is VAT, stamp duty, withholding tax, customs duty, and special consumption taxes. What is different, probably, or what is important to say for you, for the Slovak entrepreneurs, that Swiss citizens, foreigners with a permanent residency, or foreigners married to Swiss citizens, don't have their taxes deducted from the salary. They need to file a tax return each year. And annual tax return is also due if you are working as a self-employed person or as an employee of a foreigner and employer. This is also interesting to say that if the taxpayer fails to file the tax return on time, they may be subject of default taxation. And this is also interesting to know. Within the Swiss tax system, it's important for you as a companies to know that 18 Swiss cantons have tax on profits minor than 15%. Zug is in German beliebste Canton. Zurich and Bern is a little bit about 20%. When entering to the Swiss market, you have to be informed that there are, as Switzerland is a non-EU member, there are non-tariff obstacles and so-called market access barrier lists, which are several types of them. Several tens, and I have selected in the next page for you a few of them which might have higher impact on your decision on doing business here in Switzerland. The most important probably is the 8 days rule. For EU service providers and posted workers, you have to register your posted workers 8 days prior to come to Switzerland. There is a duty for foreign service providers and companies to pay a deposit from 5,000 to 20,000 francs. The matter of fact is that the foreign businesses coming to Switzerland are subject of a higher percentage of controls in comparison to Swiss companies, and the cost, which is interesting to know, the control costs of Swiss control bodies are charged to the EU-based, or let's say foreign businesses. Minimum working and salary conditions. This is also a question because when this rule is broken, you might be blacklisted and sanctioned. There is a Swissness legislation, which is important, especially for agri sector, that the Swiss made label requires between 60% up to 100% of the value-added ingredients. They need to be originated in Switzerland. Regarding a public procurement, we can spend hours to talk about public procurements here in Switzerland. The majority of public procurements are made on a cantonal level within the 26 cantons. So even these public procurements is decentralized, and it's not only on a federal level. And the conditions are different in a comparison with what we know from our country regarding the public procurement. Conditions from posted employers. I have chosen this one specific condition, which I have chosen because I was asked several times for this, especially A-Day rules, that EU service providers and workers which are temporarily posted to Switzerland have to be announced to the Swiss authority, to the cantonal ones, 8 days prior to start of the provision of service. In most sectors, the notification is required if the posting surpasses 8 days in total, especially for sectors construction, cleaning, restaurant, security, travel agency services, gardening, landscaping. You need to be registered from the first day. Of course, employment contract, ID, and a proof of accommodation is also important. Regarding the public company in Switzerland, I have chosen the most common types of the companies here. I would like to probably add that there are companies as Prodigo, for example, who are taking care in helping the Slovak companies to decide, help them to decide what is the best solution for them in order to come to the Swiss market. Probably one small thing to add, that if you would like to open a branch office in Switzerland, this branch office is a matter of the Swiss law. So this is taken as a Swiss company in effect. Just for your information, I have read in Zurich Zeitung that in Zurich, in the center of the city, in Bahnhof, of course, all the important marks are there present, because on Saturday they can be visited by overall 50,000 people. So it's important, and then it's important to know that also a meter quadrate of renting a shop is around 9,000 Swiss francs per meter in Zurich in concrete. This is just to let you know. One important thing to add about our Honorary Council of the Slovak Republic in Bern, in Zurich, Mr. Leons Meyer, he is active in Board Finder organization, which offers a diverse range of possible independent board members for your company in Switzerland. Really different architects, lawyers, doctors, and those people are able to open doors to customers and make sure that everything complies to the local law. Regarding COVID, we are back to COVID. I have to say a few words about the COVID. In Switzerland is the information from the federal government the federal government is informing the population well in advance. Everything is written, everything is public. It's very easy to find it, the current measures on internet, which is very good. Regarding the figures, the situation is bettering in comparison with end of August and beginning of September. The number of fully vaccinated people is growing, is close to the 60% of the population. The measures, and as I said, they are communicated on a regular basis and well in advance through the Ministry of Health, BAG, they call it BAG. Now the COVID certificates are applied for most of the events, which are present events in Switzerland. Bearing in mind that the 3 vaccines are approved by Swissmedic, and there are some vaccines which are allowed for transit in Switzerland. Regarding the travel aspects, you have to be registered when you are entering to Switzerland, and you should prove your COVID certificate, meaning or vaccination or negative test or recoverness from COVID. The new thing, or relatively actual thing, is that the Swiss authorities applied a quarantine and a negative test after 4 to 7 days after your arrival. This is not applying for a transit through Switzerland, only for entry. I'm really happy that I can present one Slovak company, and I would like to thank Andreas and Michal. I'm sure that they hear me, to share, in fact, the experience from the Slovak company with you. The matter of fact is that the Slovak company, Go Big Name, is a Slovak company or agency in the field of naming, branding and trademarks, with several years of experience and more than 200 long-term branding projects. Here are to show you the some of their customers. There are many of them, not only those. But what is important to say, and might be of your interest, that since this year, this company has a Swiss contractor. He is responsible for doing business in Switzerland. Andreas Kistler, he is Swiss, and his aim is to build a personal network based on trust, which is most important in Switzerland, because he has advantage of knowing a local industry, know-how, local language, of course, and in fact, as I said, and I have to repeat it, trust is a basic condition for making business in Switzerland. To know the people, to communicate with the people on a regular basis, and ideally to be based in Switzerland. Of course, not only positives and negatives are there. You have to be aware, of course, the salary level is different between Slovakia and Switzerland. So this is in fact all. I hope I am in my scope of 30 minutes. And now I would like to thank you for your attention. Here is my address. I will be for your further disposal, open for your question. And I would like to pass the floor back to Marek. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. Very interesting presentation. A lot of recent details about pandemics also and COVID, etc. Now I would like to hand over to Michel so that he starts with his presentation. Michel?
Yes, thank you, Marek. Good morning. Good morning, Linda. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by thanking Sario for the organization of this webinar, and I wish to thank in particular Marek Potsklan and his colleagues for their excellent support in the preparation of this today's event on Switzerland. Now, before starting, let me briefly introduce myself. All of my professional life, I have been working in the field of international trade promotion. And over the last 7 years, I was working as a trade commissioner at the Belgian embassy in Switzerland. Now, afterwards, I joined Prodigo, a business development company that was created back in early last year. Whereby we are helping companies from Europe to enter the Swiss market with their products and their services. I co-created this company together with Joanne Gribaud, who is also together with us today. Hello, Joanne. And so we combine our experiences from the trade promotion and business management in this company. Sorry?
No, nothing.
Okay. Well, I'm based in Zurich, in the German-speaking part of Switzerland, whereas Joanne is based in Neuchâtel, which is located in the French-speaking part. It is quite important to be near to the different languages, as Linda has also been said, and I will come back on that later. Now, just to end this part, with our company, we are offering several types of services, ranging from market survey, but also advice in the field of regulatory affairs, both tariffary and non-tariffary barriers, for example, or to find commercial contacts for you by lists that we can prepare, long lists of contacts, short lists, and then also the next step then to business facilitation, also by establishing individual contact programs, and also marketing support is also something that we do in case of need to appoint a fiscal representative. That's also the service that we are offering, as well as assistance in setting up a legal entity here in Switzerland.
Well, thank you very much for your intervention. Also, we know that Switzerland is quite a rich country, and it's also a multinational country in addition to its richness. But what are the current business dynamics in Switzerland? Could you tell us, Michel, please?
Yes, Marek. Well, when we'll have a look first at the macroeconomic figures, well, there you will see that they look quite positive, in fact. So when we start a comparison, for example, between this and last year we still had the GDP was going back with a minus 3.3%, and this year there is a plus 3.4%. And this is supposed to climb even further for next year, according to the Swiss State Secretariat for Economic Affairs, SECO. In fact, the same tendency, we see that as well for the private consumption. I will also illustrate that later on, but there was a clear drop last year with minus 4.4%, and this year we see a positive figure of 2.6%, and also there for next year this is expected to raise even further to more than 4%. Maybe the most spectacular figure here in the slides are the exports. So last year Switzerland saw a decline in its exports of more than 6%. Whereby this year these exports are very positive with a number of plus 6.3%, and also there we see that the figures for next year are also supposed to climb to 6.7%. And then I picked just one last figure out of the slide, the unemployment rate. Traditionally, the unemployment has always been quite low in Switzerland. But last year there was a plus of 3.2% unemployment. This year this is still a little bit supposed to raise, but then for next year there we see a clear drop, whereby the percentage is expected to go under 3%. So then according to SECO, this should be then 2.7%. Now, as I was referring, we can go on the next slide, please, to the purchasing power or the private consumption. Well, the purchasing power in Switzerland remains, in fact, after Liechtenstein, the second highest in Europe, which means that, concretely speaking, a Swiss customer can, in fact, afford more as 3 times as much as the European average. And when we take the Corona Impact Index of as 100, well, there we see, for example, that as the European average, there we see, for example, that Germany, that you see in the last row of this slide, is at 77. But then when we move on up, higher up in the slide, there we see that, for example, Switzerland is just 26. Just only preceded by Liechtenstein, which is even lower, the impact. What does that mean? Well, I think that this information could be quite interesting for the companies who are, in fact, active in the B2C, in the business to consumer field. So that is maybe also something that you could keep in mind.
Thank you very much for interesting figures. Unfortunately, I think that almost every country was somehow affected by pandemics, and it's also the case of Switzerland and of Slovakia as well. But it seems to be optimistic. However, we are close enough to Switzerland, but our foreign trade, I would say that still is not ideal. So, in which sectors do you see some opportunities for Slovak companies? Are there any sectors?
Well, definitely, and I think we can maybe start by having a look first at the last year's trade figures, and more in particular the exports from Slovakia to Switzerland. Well, there we see a clear, in the top 3, a clear first place for vehicles. Of course, many vehicles are being produced in Slovakia. You have a very important car manufacturing industry, also components. So that is definitely clear. And then in the second place, there you see electrical machinery and equipment. Of course, this is a quite general name for a lot of types of products. Important, I think, is also that you see there the finished products and then also equipment. And the same counts also for the third section, machinery and then also mechanical appliances. And this will, in fact, bring me to the next slide, where you where I put I try to put some opportunities here on the slide. I would say, in general, and this is not just counting for Slovakia, but Switzerland is often seen as an interesting test market. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Geographically speaking, Switzerland is surrounded by big European countries, big European markets, in fact, like Germany and Italy, France. So that can be interesting to test it first here and then reach out to these other countries. Because you need also to take into account for that test market that Switzerland is a multi-cultural country with several linguistic communities coming together there. I will come back on that as well later, the German, the French and the Italian speaking communities. And they reflect, in fact, a taste also. So that can also be a factor of check the readiness of your product or your service. And then also a third reason for being an ideal test market is that Switzerland is a country where innovation is very important, and then also quality. So that these are also factors that can be taken into account when considering Switzerland as a test market. Sustainability, like everywhere, is becoming also more and more important for both products and also sustainable technologies, so sustainable applications. So when you have a product or a service that is also related or located within this reach, well, then you make a good chance for being successful here. A third opportunity I see is for organic or bio products. I put there some figures and I think they are quite self-explanatory. Last year, more than 10% of all the food products that have been sold on the Swiss market were in fact bio-based. And you see there that the turnover of not less than 3.5 billion euros is also speaking for itself. And there is that trend that is continuously over the last years moving upward, because when we just compare the figures from last year to 2019, well, there was a raise for more than 19%. I have to say that there are several labels that are being taken into account by retailers or by importers. So there's not just one label, and these labels have their own requirements. So that is also something that needs to be taken into account. Which one is being applied or being considered here in Switzerland? It is not necessarily the same as in the EU. I would even say that sometimes it's a little bit more stringent, more strict. But when you have the label, well, then I think you can have, you can also take advantage of this interesting trend. Then there is a sector that I would particularly focus on towards the Slovak business community, and that is the subcontracting. We see also a clear trend, for example, amongst pharma companies or even larger life sciences companies, like, for example, fine chemicals, for making more and more use of subcontractors from abroad. And being so strong in Slovakia in machine industry, as we have been seen on the previous slides there with the trade figures, I think there as well, there is a very interesting opportunity there. Because in Switzerland, the machine and electromechanics industry is also very important, but there they have always to keep in mind that the labor cost, which is quite high in Switzerland, can also affect their price setting. They have to take that into account, that they need to stay competitive in order to be able to continue their exports abroad. So by using more and more components made on the same quality level to the same exact standards and requirements as in Switzerland, by importing them and by incorporating them in the final product, the Swiss machine producers are still able to export their machines as being made in Switzerland, even when they are also composed of foreign components. So there I would also stress on. As it has been said, innovation is very important. The Swiss are sensitive to innovation, also to innovative products. It's quite an interesting, an interesting balance that you see. On one hand, Switzerland is very attached to its traditions, and on the other hand, the company is also very fond of innovative solutions. And this is also, I can illustrate that with a ranking that is made yearly. Perhaps you have heard already of the Global Innovation Index. That's an index that is in fact yearly published by WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization of the United Nations in Geneva. And now for I think it's the 10th consecutive year, Switzerland is there on #1 as being the most innovative country in the world. So this ranking is in fact based on a number of parameters, of course, comparative parameters that are being applied to each country. And then in fact, the outcome makes this list. And Switzerland is there, in fact, topping that list. And then last but not least, and we also have received in advance some questions from Slovak IT and ICT companies. Well, there is also a need for more digitalization in Switzerland, as we have been seeing also due to COVID-19. There has been a trend that has been speeding up in terms of digitalization, especially amongst Swiss small and medium-sized enterprises, which had not been gone that far before the pandemic started. So there is certainly an opportunity. On the other hand, you also need to know that there is a key factor in Switzerland regarding data protection and also the localization of data. I have noticed that the Swiss companies are keen to have their data located on servers in Switzerland and in order to maintain control over that information. So there is perhaps also a difference that we notice there compared to the habits of companies within the European Union.
Gorgeous view. I wouldn't expect this view from Switzerland, but yeah, it's Lugano Lake. Actually, it's a very narrow strip that has, I would say, Mediterranean climate. A lot of people would expect Switzerland only with the views of mountains, mountain ranges, mountain areas, but okay, let's back to business. What kind of approach towards Swiss potential partners would you recommend to Slovak businessmen and to Slovak companies that would like to enter this market?
Well, I will immediately come to that, Marek, but it's nice that you mentioned that, in fact, these differences within Switzerland. As I said, there are multicultural differences and also, in fact, climate difference also, because this is really in the south of Switzerland and where effectively you can really see growing palm trees there and also subtropical vegetation, so that makes it also quite interesting. And I had indeed inserted a couple of slides with views on several places within Switzerland, because I think that when you are trying to know more about a country, then it's not pure facts and figures, it's also dealing with people, it's also dealing with places where you go to. So having said that, I think we can move to the next slide. Whereby I would, when we talk about approaching Swiss potential partners, maybe a starting point there, I would say, is that if you are a Slovak small or medium-sized enterprise, well, there you have a big advantage. Because in Switzerland, there are many SMEs. I put a figure there, it's 99.7%, in fact, of all companies are SMEs, and they count for 2/3 of all the jobs. Now, this brings then the advantage for you that you can there talk from equal to equal. And that's also immediately a favor that of an advantage that you have to build trust by setting up also a long-term relationship, because many Swiss are attached to that, and even they are not just an SME, but often they are also family-owned businesses. So this is also something that really can count as an advantage. Now, when going further, then as a checkup, that has been said already by Linda, do your homework, I would say, because Switzerland is not a member of the European Union. There may apply some different regulations. They can be both tariffary in terms of taxes that you have, import taxes that you have to pay for your product, but also non-tariffary barriers, whereby Switzerland applies a different regulation for products. This can be quite easily found in the access to markets database from the European Commission. Why is it so important? Because especially when tariffs apply, well, this will of course affect your price setting. And it's always good that you know it in advance before the question is being asked by a Swiss what the pricing of your products or your services are. So having said that, I would also, and that's a second point there, mention that it is good to start with realistic targets in terms of volume and also expectations. Do that on a step-by-step basis. And I think it's better to grow steadily than putting too high expectations right from the beginning. Then what I've also observed over the years is that companies often tend to forget that they already have very interesting references. They have been dealing with, for example, Swiss companies also in their country, because of course, it's also been said by Mr. Ambassador that Switzerland is also an important investor in Slovakia. They have also plants there, Swiss companies. They are represented in Slovakia. So perhaps you already have been dealing with a Swiss company over there or in another country. Well, when you have such a Swiss reference, well, put that certainly in the foreground when you are talking to a Swiss prospect, because that can also raise more confidence in them. So that's something that you can also use. Now, Switzerland is a quite competitive market because it is interesting, it is attractive. So you're not the only one to offer your products or your services on the Swiss market. Now, if you want to distinguish or to differentiate yourself from other persons who are also approaching Swiss prospects, I would strongly recommend you to lower the threshold as much as you can. And this can be sometimes be done through easy means. For example, by translating your website or your documentation, a brochure or a flyer, into German or into French or into Italian. Because when they are receiving that in their own mother tongue, being German, French or Italian, well, then they can read it they will be much more inclined to read the information that you're sending to them. And then as a second consequence of that, before I talked of the Swiss market as being an ideal test market, being surrounded by France, Germany and Italy, well, then you have that documentation already ready for these markets as well. So I think it can be quite useful to do that. And then finally, as I said, Switzerland is a multicultural country. There are 3 main languages there, German, French and Italian. And this is also clearly reflected in many fields. You see clear difference when you are in Bern or in Lugano or in Lausanne or Geneva, for example, in terms of gastronomy, in fashion, decoration and literature. So when you are active in a sector that is dealing with one of these fields, domains, well, this is also something that you should take into account. Now, how does that look? And then that brings us to the next slide, where you see a map of Switzerland. The middle blue part is the German-speaking part, which is by far the biggest part of Switzerland, both in terms of geography, but also in terms of language. 62% of the Swiss are German-speaking, followed by the French-speaking part, almost 23% that you see there in the clear blue part. And then you see the dark blue part in the south, and that's the Italian, which counts for over 8%. Now, a question that I have quite often received is how to approach Swiss potential partners. Where to start in Switzerland? And that's indeed a good question. And I've been often thinking about it because Switzerland, as it has been said, has 26 cantons, 26 mini-states, if you want. But not all of them have the same level or number of inhabitants. And when you, in fact, look at seven cantons, well, there you see that 63%, in fact, is living in these 7 cantons. That's the plateau, like they call it. And that's, in fact, that line, that diagonal axe that you see starting up north, with a very big blue dot there, which is the entire Zurich area with Winterthur and St. Gallen. And then, in fact, moving more to the left, more westwards, you see there another blue spot a little bit higher up, that's Basel. And then it's going more down, where you see Bern. And then, in fact, you see that light blue part, which is the Lake of Geneva, where you have first the city of Lausanne, and then, in fact, at a very western part of Switzerland, Geneva. There are living most of the people in Switzerland. So that can be interesting when you are targeting on companies, maybe by selecting the companies which are located in these cantons.
Thank you for interesting facts. For example, can you share some tips if a Slovak company decides to go on business trip to Switzerland? Do you have any advices or any ideas how should a Slovak company conduct its business or its negotiations in Switzerland?
I will be glad. I will gladly share some tips with you. And it was good that, as a very first point in our presentation, Linda mentioned, in fact, the particularities for doing business, and they are also influenced, in fact, by the way to do business. First, for example, first point is that the communication in Switzerland is quite formal. They do not use first names. That takes some time, so it's always by Herr or Monsieur, with or Madame or Frau, followed by the family name. Then the dress code is also more formal, because the Swiss, in fact, that's also a kind of reflection of the fact that they are separating, in fact, business life from private life. And that is also noticed in the talk, when you talk to Swiss prospects, that they do not talk about personal aspects. So the professional context is quite separate from the private life. And the reason why, I think, is that Swiss see a reserved attitude as a kind of virtue, because for them it does not play a role to know where you have spent your last holiday, for example, in order to make a good business. So that is something that they separate. Another thing is that I would recommend you to prepare yourself well when you reach out to a Swiss prospect, because you can be sure that they will do that as well. And then related to that is that it is important to communicate fully on a clear and transparent way, because they expect that from you, so that there is that they have right from the beginning a complete overview of what your offer is. Linda has also said, and that's really true, that the Swiss decision-making process is clearly slower than in other countries. The Swiss take their time because they hate to come back on a decision that has been taken previously. So when they give a yes, you can be sure that it is an absolute yes, and that you have the confidence. And they also expect them to have that confidence also from your side. So that's also a reason why I would not recommend to be pushy. Leave them the time to reflect internally, and that give them the possibility to come back to you. And then I would say, and that's maybe not a surprise to all of you, Switzerland being the country of watches, so that you have to be on time for your appointments. And I can clearly illustrate that with a personal example that I have experienced myself. When I arrived in Switzerland in 2013, I got this invitation from the technical department for my car, whereby I received an appointment on the 21st of October 2013 at 15:34. I first thought it was a mistake, and it was maybe that it was at 15:30, but the lady I had on the phone said that it was clearly 34. In case I would have come at 30, I was too early. And in case I would have come at 35 or 40, well, then I should make a new appointment. So just to tell you, okay, this is maybe a quite extreme example, but this is an official invitation from an official service in Zurich here. So that is something that they attach a lot of importance to be very punctual.
I think I should also learn such punctuality. But for conclusion, is there potential, and what are the success factors? What do you think, Michel? Tell us.
Well, I think, Marek, that there clearly is. So I would say that on one hand, the Swiss market is quite demanding. I think you have also understood that based on what has been said before. There are some trade barriers due to the fact that Switzerland is not a member of the EU. That is also clearly playing a role. So both tariff-free and non-tariff-free barriers. The expectations in terms of quality and innovation are also quite high. There is also, of course, that slower decision-making process compared to other markets, and also a strong competition that we have to take into account. But on the other hand, I would say that it is a very interesting market, where I would define success as a combination maybe of 5 factors. When you have a high quality product or service, which is still not existent in Switzerland, or which is at least competitive with an existing product or service, whereby you can also show references and a good documentation adapted to the Swiss market, as I said before, maybe translated into German and French, and also with a very strict compliance with agreements, delivery time, and a good after sales and follow up, and also towards the customers. Well, then I would say, as a result, once you have then taken hold, in turn, you get a very good relationship, which is loyal in the long term, which is based on a strong confidence, which is also very important, of course, where price is often of secondary importance, not of prime importance, but secondary importance, and also without payment problems. So I think with such a conclusion, I think it's quite attractive to end my presentation here. So, but I remain at your disposal for further questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for your intervention and for your presentation. I think that you have brought us very interesting figures so that we get acquainted with Swiss market. I would like to thank you also to you, Linda, for your interesting facts and for your presentation. Now I would like to share my screen again, just a minute, just a second. Slide, please. We haven't got so far any Q&A from your side, so I hope that it was interesting for you as you didn't ask anything. So maybe the next time, who knows? Next slide, please. And yes, I would like to invite you all, of course, you Slovak companies, to our biggest matchmaking event that is organized by Sario agency, and it's called Slovak Matchmaking Fair. This year it will be held on the 21st of October online. We had to change the official form, unfortunately, due to pandemics or pandemic situation. Registration is ongoing until tomorrow, so hurry up, you have the last chance, last opportunity to join this biggest matchmaking fair that is in Slovakia. So thank you very much. And if you have, or in case you have any questions, just you can write an email or text me. You can also call me. I'm consultant, as I mentioned, firstly, in foreign trade department of Sario agency, just now, and I am responsible for DACH region. So in case of any requirements, just let us know. So thank you very much. Big gratitude goes also to our speakers that brought us very interesting figures, interesting facts about Swiss market, and I hope that this all was useful for you, dear participants and dear attendees. And some of you also chose the option for online consultation, as I mentioned, and I arranged the online consultations for you, so you can find it in your Outlook or in your email. I send you an invitation. So see those who are joining us during online, free of charge online consultations in the afternoon. We are looking forward to speaking to you. So thank you very much, and have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
And bon appetit, I think.
Thank you.
Because in Switzerland it's the same time, so bon appetit.
Yeah. Thank you, Marek. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot as well from our side, Marek, also for the organization, and yeah, we remain at your disposal. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.
Goodbye.